Let's actually test if this can make money. So I'll test it with a very popular strategy, which is an EMA cross on Bitcoin, which is trained on 15 years of data, once at a fixed size and once the quant way using the skill. So I essentially just asked it to download Bitcoin price history in case it didn't have access, run the sizing comparison on it, and then make sure the target risk matches the EMA strategy to make sure the comparison is apples to apples. All right, so you can see the growth of $1 from 2012 with the fixed size strategy on Bitcoin, which is the gray line, and then the volatility target GARCH size line, which you can see actually ends up marginally beating the fixed strategy on Bitcoin. And at the same time, the volatility targeted strategy from GARCH actually took less drawdowns than Bitcoin in the meantime as well. So whenever you run a model like this, you can actually get volatility targeted graphs generated like this, which I think are really cool. So you can map out potential trades, which I think is valuable. And it's what a quant firm would do to visually map out a trade before they enter. And obviously Claude does this for you if you download the skill. I think the crazy part is actually the Sharpe ratio. This is essentially the risk adjusted return of an investment, because investments aren't just about, whether you made money. It's also about how much risk you took on to make that amount of money. And you can see that the volume targeted approach had a significantly better Sharpe ratio, meaning it had better risk adjusted returns. So even if you make the same amount of money, if you can do so taking on less risk, then that is the better approach. And that was reflected in the drawdown charts. It simply took on less drawdown. So the max drawdown with the volatility targeted approach that used our strategy was 63%. The max drawdown with the fixed size strategy was 81%. The worst month with our approach was 19%. The worst month normally was 40%. The final equity on our approach was 21,000, and the final equity on the fixed size approach was 17.9 thousand. Now I'm going to ask it, run the same comparison on my NASDAQ position over the last 50 years. Now for NASDAQ, this is actually extremely interesting. It improved the Sharpe ratio. It improved every single risk number, so you took on a lot less risk, but it did cost a full point of compounded annual growth rate. So over 50 years, this would have made you $99 less. So Bitcoin won risk and absolute return. Equities didn't. Equities won the risk component, which may have enabled you to size up more, which may have enabled you to, end up out returning, but that is a variable test we need to run on new numbers. But nonetheless, it did cost in this experiment less returns because the sizes throttle mostly trimmed exposure during violent rallies off the lows. However, it did earn its keep in some capacity because the goal of a fund is not to blow up. So in the .com bust, where fixed sizing hit its yearly worst at minus 28.8%, volume targeting kept it to roughly minus 13%. Same story in 2008, 28% versus 13%, and 2022, 23% versus 13%. And its worst month was cut from 10.9% to only 7.7%. So the takeaway with the NASDAQ is that volume targeting is buying insurance, not extra return. So it halves the pain, but it costs you 1% compounded annual growth rate. And whether that trade is worth it, as Fable points out, depends on whether you'd actually sit through a minus 29% without capitulating. Most people wouldn't, and capitulation costs more than the insurance premium. Very interesting thought process. This skill is not meant to be the only thing you use to trade. This is a tool for you to use to understand a risk and to help understand what environment you're in and how to target. I do think a lot of people, though, they struggle with this so much that if they had a tool like this, they would lose significantly less amounts of money because they'd be able to think in a different capacity when opening trades. Even if it is for riskier asset types, it can help a lot. And it even helps when charting. So if you go into the GitHub and you go into PineScript and go storm gauge Pine, what you can do is you can copy the entire file here. You can just either copy the raw file in the top right hand corner or simply copy and paste. Then go into TradingView, then click on the little pyramid logo here. Then I've already got one in, but I'll clear it out and show you what it would look like. Paste it in. Click enter, click refresh, and this is going to load the indicator on your screen, which is this indicator here, which goes through the metrics we discussed before. So the market violence metric, the current percentage versus the limit, the category it's in versus the last year. So we could see it's heavily in storm territory, 96% more volatile versus the past year. It has a sizing suggestion and an example on $10,000 and a suggested action based on the number above. And then you can also see the volatility bands in here as well to help you understand the movements of the market. So this is a very helpful tool that you can use, and of course you can build upon it. The best thing about this being in Claude is that you can make tweaks and edit things over time and create your own parameters. So if you want all of this, use the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe because I'm going to be doing a lot more AI trading content like this. And we can even build skills together for other areas of trading and potentially other quant strategies because there are multiple approaches here, but I wanted to touch on one of the most relevant ones today. And yeah, thank you for your time today. I'll see you in the next video. Have a lovely rest of your day. Peace out.